So, some approaches to writing a proposal. So first of all, are there any questions or comments just about format? And I've written a few proposals that have been funded, kind of using this general technique, and it's worked well. I had some that didn't get funded as well, but of course, writing, it's all good to know kind of what to put in the different sections, but then you got to actually get this thing down on paper. And some of this is a little bit obvious, but there's something to think about. Divide things into smaller tasks. So there's the proposal itself. The proposal has different sections. You can break all that up. There's the budget. There's all those things. So each week, choose something and get it done. But you want to give yourself plenty of time, and you want to give other people plenty of time, because you can talk to the sponsor research people, right? Other people are also going to be responsible for getting certain things done in your proposal. And the more time people have, the less mistakes are made, and just the better it is. So there's always the argument, well, I don't have much time, but the reality is if you're serious about getting the money, you have to make the time, and that's just the reality of it. So you don't want to put it off. And a great example that everyone can relate to is you've got students and you've assigned a paper, right? And you know that half your students don't write it until 2 a.m. in the morning before it's due. And do they do a good job? They don't do a good job, right? I mean, and think of your own experience when you're in school. It's when you've done it ahead, you can put it aside, you can come back to it, revisit it. That's where you can start creating quality work. So the first thing you want to do, in my opinion, is you got to get the hypothesis part first. So before you've written anything, define what that is, and think about it, and write it down, and maybe get some of those sub-objectives down, and then that's going to help you with the background material. You want to get to that point through the background material, and it's going to help you with all your research activities. It also defines everything else. So it defines the experiments you're going to have to carry out, or the actual study you're going to have to do. The resources are going to be defined by that. How much time you need to spend, the money, so that's going to be related to the budget, equipment, all that sort of thing. So get that first. And it's only a few sentences, right? But it might be, well, certainly I think is the most important part of the proposal, and it might be the hardest part to get down, is to really define it. Because not only does it, it's got to be important for your field of study as well. And like I said before, you can have a great proposal, but if your hypothesis is not well thought out, then you're not going to get funding for it. Okay, so what I like to do for the writing part, and what's nice to get that hypothesis part done is, and then you get the budget, an idea of the budget, and then you can send all that stuff off to the other people who have to do things for you, like get things submitted into FastLane or whatever system it might be, but the sponsored research can start working on their part of it while you're actually writing things, right? So what I do with the writing is I make an outline. And I start with just really general stuff. And then I start filling it in. I just get to more and more detailed points. And once I get to the level of detail that I feel needs to be there, then I convert each bullet point into a sentence. And that really helps me divide things into smaller sections. If I'm stuck on one part, like in the background, I can just leave it as a broad, general statement or a couple bullet points, and I can move on to something else. And it helps break everything up. And as you get to more detail, you want to make sure, this is also important just in terms of your writing, you want to make sure that every point follows from the last. You don't want to have certain statements that are kind of stated in a vacuum, right? You want the flow to be correct. This also is related to the, getting from at least in the background material, getting from the general importance down to the specific proposal. And then you convert it to a sentence. You do a couple reviews of it to make sure that it doesn't seem too choppy, and that's it. You have it written then. And this is really, for scientific writing at least, this is how I approach all of my scientific writing, even when I'm writing a journal article. So to get back to the relationship to a story, what I kind of when I describe this to students in terms of how to do your writing, where you have kind of one sentence for every specific point you want to make, I call it economy of words. Okay, so we want to make every word count, and if the words in the sentence don't contribute to the story we're trying to tell, then they shouldn't be there. Okay, and this is I had this phrase in my head, economy of words. I didn't know where it came from, and I actually typed it into Google, and it's Ernest Hemingway, actually. So he's been described as having an economy of words. And I don't know if, hopefully everyone's read at least one Ernest Hemingway story, but he writes with very short, concise statements, and he even stated himself that in his narratives, he did not want to say anything that was not important to the story itself. And so I think if he had been an academician, he would have been a very good proposal writer. So you also want to think like a reviewer, okay? And we've been kind of alluding to this throughout. These are underpaid people in general, they're overworked, and what they're part of their job generally is reviewing proposals as part of their service to the community. But most of the time they don't get to choose when they want to do it. The agency send them something and say, okay, I want this back in 3 weeks. So they don't necessarily have time carved out for this. So the easier their job is for them, the better. And you can make their job easy by making the proposal to the point, simple. Don't make them think about it. Okay? Give them all the information they need, and you'll get a positive response from them. I mean, when I review proposals, there are occasions when I will have to go to the literature and look things up, but boy, it sure is nice when you don't have to do that. Because when you're looking up something in the literature, because you want to understand something that they're trying to do, my thought in the head is, well, why didn't they provide this information, right? So you want to make that work easy. And then realize that a lot of times the reviewers, they're intelligent people, but they are not necessarily familiar with your work. So this gets back to, make sure you define your acronyms, and you write very clearly and keep it as simple as possible, but give the level of detail that's necessary to understand just the work that you're going to do and the results that you're going to obtain. And I think that's, prepare ahead, of course. And so we've already discussed this, you want time to edit your work. And my rule is, there's two things. First of all, finish it, put it in the most complete form I can, and then I have to give myself at least 24 hours where I don't look at it and I don't think about it. And then I go back to it and I try to read it as if I was not the person who wrote it. So you try to put yourself in a mindset that I didn't write this document, and because of course if you know what you're trying to say, right? I mean, when you write something, and be very harsh with yourself, and then do an edit on that document. And then if you can, even after you've gone through one cycle of editing, put it aside again and go back to it again. Even better, you give it to somebody else to do the same thing. It's nice to have someone in your own field look at it who can kind of analyze it for the actual content, for the whether the work you're proposing to do makes sense and is important. But even give it to somebody who's not in your field, but is good at writing. So some agencies, research institutes specifically, they have requirements that when you want to submit a proposal, you have to get it reviewed in-house by 1 or 2 people before you can submit it to the grant funding agency. And why do they do that? They do that because it works, right? I mean, a lot of these institutes, they're dependent on this money for their salaries, and so the practices they have in place are things that work, or they wouldn't be doing that. So if you can, even though we don't have those requirements here, if you can force yourself to do that, get that finished on time, then it's going to benefit you. And if you're really serious about getting money through your proposal,